dear listeners, tonight we begin a gentle tale of Beauty and the Beast. It is a story of kindness, courage, and seeing beyond appearances. As the night grows quiet, let your worries fade away. Close your eyes, relax, and drift into a peaceful sleep with this magical story. Long ago, in a distant land where trade routes stretched across forests and seas, there lived a wealthy merchant who was known for his honesty and good fortune. He had several children, but among them were 3 daughters who were especially known in the town. The 2 elder daughters were admired for their fine clothes and striking appearance, yet their hearts were filled with pride and vanity. They loved riches, attention, and comfort, and often spent their days dreaming of luxury and admiration. The youngest daughter, however, was very different. She was called Beauty, not only because she was the most lovely of them all, but because her nature was gentle, her heart was pure, and her mind was thoughtful and studious. While her sisters laughed at simple things and chased after admiration, Beauty found joy in reading, learning, and quietly helping her father in his daily life. For many years, the merchant's life was prosperous, and his children lived surrounded by comfort. But fate, as it often does, turned unexpectedly. His ships were lost at sea, his goods vanished, and in a short time, all his wealth disappeared. Forced to leave behind their grand home, the merchant and his children moved to a small, humble dwelling in the countryside. The elder daughters could not bear this change. They complained constantly, lamenting their lost luxuries and refusing to adjust to their new life. Beauty, however, accepted their circumstances with grace. She rose early each morning, worked diligently, and brought warmth and peace into their modest home, never once complaining about what had been lost. Years passed in this quiet hardship until one day, the merchant received news that one of his ships, long thought destroyed, had arrived safely at port. Filled with hope, he prepared to make the journey, believing his fortune might at last be restored. Before leaving, he asked his daughters what gifts they wished him to bring back. The elder daughters immediately demanded expensive dresses, jewels, and all manner of fine things they had once enjoyed. Beauty, however, after thinking for a moment, simply said, "Father, if you wish to bring me anything, I would be happy with just a single rose." The merchant smiled at her modest request and set out on his journey. But when he reached the port, his hopes were shattered once again. The news had been false, or the goods lost in dispute, and he returned empty-handed, burdened with disappointment. As he made his way home through a vast and shadowy forest, night began to fall. A cold wind rose, and soon he found himself lost among the dark trees, unable to find his path. Weary, frightened, and with no shelter in sight, he wandered until, quite suddenly, he came upon a magnificent castle glowing softly in the darkness. Its gates stood open, and light shone warmly from within. With no other choice, he entered cautiously, calling out, but no one answered. Inside, he found a grand hall prepared as though awaiting a guest. A fire burned brightly, and a table was laid with food. Though uneasy at the silence, his hunger and exhaustion overcame his hesitation. He ate, warmed himself, and eventually found a bed where he slept deeply. When morning came, the merchant awoke to find the castle still empty. Grateful yet puzzled, he prepared to leave. As he walked through the garden on his way out, he noticed a beautiful rose bush in full bloom. Remembering Beauty's simple request, he reached out and plucked a single rose. At that very instant, a terrible roar echoed through the air, and before him appeared a fearsome beast, enormous and terrifying, with eyes that burned with fury. "You repay my kindness with theft?" the beast thundered. "I gave you shelter, food, and safety, and yet you steal from me the very thing I hold most dear." The merchant fell to his knees, trembling, and begged forgiveness. He explained that the rose was not for himself, but for his daughter, who had asked for nothing else. The beast listened, his anger still fierce but touched by the man's honesty. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice low and heavy. "You shall not leave without punishment. Either you must give your life, or one of your daughters must come here willingly to take your place." The merchant, heartbroken and afraid, agreed, though the thought filled him with despair. The beast allowed him to leave, but only after extracting his promise. When the merchant returned home and told his daughters everything, the elder sisters cried loudly, but their sorrow was not for their father, it was for themselves, for fear that one of them might be chosen. Beauty, however, remained calm. Seeing her father's grief, she stepped forward and said gently, "Father, you must not suffer for my sake. It was I who asked for the rose. I will go in your place." Though her father pleaded with her, she would not be persuaded. And so, with heavy hearts, they returned together to the enchanted castle. When they arrived, the beast received them. Though his appearance was as frightening as ever, his manner toward Beauty was not cruel. He allowed the merchant to depart, and gave Beauty a grand chamber, filled with comfort and beauty beyond anything she had known. Though she was not free to leave, she was treated with respect and care. Each evening, the beast dined with her. Though his voice was rough and his form fearsome, he spoke to her kindly. And each night, at the end of their meal, he would ask, "Beauty, will you marry me?" And each night, she would answer softly, "No, beast." He never forced her, never grew violent, only saddened. As days passed, Beauty began to see beyond his outward form. She noticed his gentleness, his loneliness, and the sincerity of his heart. The castle, though mysterious and silent, no longer felt like a prison, but a place filled with quiet magic and hidden kindness. Time passed, and Beauty grew accustomed to her life there. Yet one day, she saw through a magical vision that her father had fallen ill with grief for her absence. Deeply troubled, she asked the beast for permission to visit him. Though it pained him greatly, the beast agreed. "You may go," he said, "but you must promise to return within a certain time. If you do not, I shall not survive your absence." Beauty promised faithfully and returned home. Her father was overjoyed to see her, and even her sisters pretended kindness, though their hearts were filled with envy. They persuaded her to stay longer than she intended, delaying her return. But soon, Beauty began to dream of the beast, lying alone in the garden, weak and dying. Filled with sudden fear and regret, she realized the depth of her feelings. Without delay, she returned to the castle. There, she found everything silent and still. Running through the halls and into the garden, she discovered the beast lying upon the ground, barely alive. Overcome with sorrow, she fell beside him and cried, "Do not die, beast! I did not know how much I loved you until now." As her tears fell and her words filled the air, a transformation began. The beast's terrible form faded, and in his place stood a prince, noble and radiant. He explained that he had once been cursed for his pride and selfishness, doomed to remain a beast until someone could love him truly, not for his appearance, but for his heart. Beauty's love had broken the spell. And so, the castle was restored, joy returned, and Beauty, who had always seen with kindness rather than judgment, found herself not only in a place of wonder, but beside one who had learned, through love, to become truly human again. And in that quiet, timeless way that only fairy tales can hold, they lived in peace and happiness, their story carried on as a gentle reminder that true beauty is never found in appearances, but in the heart that chooses love, even when it is hardest to see.